Governor Brian Kemp, that allowed members of the Georgia National Guard to actually assist in law enforcement, assist with law enforcement to get those streets cleared during protests over the last several weeks. Neither of those things, not the curfew and not the National Guard, is in place tonight. And so that's why you see sort of these stragglers that are just, milling about, people that have come out on a summer evening, and they're upset, and they're not going anywhere.
And that's exactly what we saw on night one, in downtown Atlanta. We had no curfew and no National Guard, and then that changed by night two. What you're seeing on your screen now, left side is our live image, right side is another look at the body cam video that we got a few hours ago, and we just aired online, and it's on our social media as well, so you can watch it in full. But this shows the moments that led to Mr. Brooks's death. This is where that struggle happens right now, and the body camera, we believe, according to Vic Reynolds, actually fell off during the altercation. It looks like right now, though, we need to go to our live images. It looks like something is being thrown.
Looks like they're breaking some windows.
Yeah, Yasmina, can you tell us what's happening?
Yeah, Brittany, so literally within the last couple of minutes, someone started throwing something through the gas station, that to-go store there, and the entire group went over, and they're breaking those windows. Everyone's running over. You can see that now. They were all over at the liquor store and have now moved across the street to what you're looking at now. So they are, in fact, breaking the windows to this business.
Do you know what kind of business it is, and where is it in relation to the Wendy's?
It looks like the convenience store for the gas station. It's called a to-go store. Now everyone's running back this way. I'm not sure what happened over there, but it is a convenience type store, and it's right next to the Wendy's. So we see that gas station, and then we've got the Wendy's over there.
And that does look like we see some smoke there. I'm not sure if you can see it from your vantage point, but it looks like it could be some kind of a smoke bomb from the police.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but whatever it was, it made everyone run back over this way and stop throwing stuff at that store over there. So,
all right, we have Bobeth Yates, who has another angle of the same situation. See if she can see what is happening on that side.
Well, Brittany, I'm at opposite side. I'm a little further back from Yasmina, closer to the line where officers and protesters have kind of clashed. If you look at my line now, there's only a handful of protesters that are standing alongside this line of officers. They have all moved over towards Yasmina, where that to-go store is. And right now, it does seem as if that was some sort of pepper spray or something that has been launched. And fire crews and it seems to be police officers are lining the street. And the crowd is now starting to make their way back towards me. But for the most part, everyone ran off down towards that to-go store and left this line of officers here. Surprisingly, the officers here did not move. They did not try to follow the crowd. They kind of stood their ground at this entrance to 75. And now you can see the group starting to come back up. Many of them were hit with tear gas, and they're covering their face, covering their eyes, and they're running away. I think at this point they're not even coming back to this area. They're running past me and walking down the street, leaving. So I think that's what it took to get them to kind of move. Because you can see now, look, if they're going past where the crowd is and making their way on the other side of the bridge where we started maybe 4 hours ago. And that smoke is actually coming towards us.
All right, Bobeth, we want you to be safe, but you can see people running, covering their eyes. You can see someone actually just put some liquid on their eyes. They're covering their mouths and covering really their faces as they run from the building. As the reporters told us, that was just vandalized. They threw something into the convenience store that was by the gas station, which, to give you a reference point, is near the Wendy's where Rayshard Brooks was shot and killed. Rick.
Well, we were wondering when this would happen, and I guess this is it. Police deciding at 1:44 or thereabouts on a Sunday morning that it was time, that they were no longer going to allow the protesters out. And certainly not when they began to throw rocks and other items at that storefront. As long as they were protesting peacefully, it didn't seem like the police had any problem with that. But as soon as they began to destroy private property, really within a minute or less, we saw the deployment of that device, whether it was a smoke bomb or tear gas or whatever it was, we don't know. But that was really, that crossed a line for law enforcement, and it led to them using tactics that we had not yet seen. And this is what happens. You see the folks, it's very painful. Mm-hmm. You were there, Brittany. You experienced this. I did not, but it sounds awful to have to breathe this stuff in.
It is, and you could see just by the visual evidence that you're watching on your screen right now, the protests that we saw, the hundreds of people that were standing face to face with officers is no more. That crowd has dispersed. It looks like on the right side we're walking with protesters as they walk away from wherever that tear gas was deployed, and we heard even our own reporter just coughing right then. The thing is now, what usually happens, Rick, if we're looking at protests in the past couple weeks, is that crowds disperse, but then they come back or they relocate somewhere else.
Right.
So now it's a matter of, if at 1:45 in the morning on a Sunday, are you going to go back to this same location? Are you going to go back to where officers are standing and where they're standing guard? Or are you going to go home? Or are you going to relocate and congregate at a different location? So we're looking at officers right now. Protesters, from our vantage point, this is a pretty tight shot, have not made their way back to that front line of officers. If you can imagine, that's where they were standing, having those discussions, having those dialogues. But in the last 15 minutes, as we just saw live on air, things took a turn, and that is what we've been sort of talking about for the past 4 or 5 hours. Things can change so easily in these situations. They are so fluid, and this is me talking as a person that's been on the ground with my colleagues out there. You just never know what's going to happen. So when we would talk to the reporters and ask them, what do you think is going to happen? They truly don't know, because things can change in an instant. This is a live look on the left-hand side of our GDOT camera. It looks like I-75-85 northbound at University Avenue. This is the scene where protesters actually shut down. I know it seems like a long time ago, but around 9 o'clock today, since we first went on air live, protesters went onto the highway and shut it down. They were standing in a straight line. No cars could get through. More protesters, filed in behind them, and they did that for about an hour and a half before, officers moved in, advancing towards them with their shields that we see them with now, with their helmets that, again, they are wearing now, and moving towards those protesters. We did see several protesters get arrested live on camera. It was not an arrest where they were pushed to the ground or anything like that. Their face was in the ground, but it wasn't a violent arrest from what we could see. And of course, we're working to learn exactly how many arrests were made. We know that just in the last few weeks, more than 500 people were arrested. 500 protesters were arrested, according to Atlanta police. So that number, of course, has since grown because of tonight's arrest. What you're looking at right now, it looks like a tank of some sort with protesters around it yelling at men in uniform. We know that tear gas was just deployed, so protesters are scattered. Where will they go next is the big question. Hopefully one of our reporters on the ground can answer that question and let us know what they're seeing. Bobeth or Yasmina, can you fill us in?
Actually, we're going to give them a little bit of a break, because I'm told that both of them have actually breathed in some of the chemicals that were released into the air. So we want to give them a chance to catch their breath.
Oh, absolutely.
And clean their eyes. But you're right. I mean, it's sort of like David and Goliath here. You see these protesters, maybe a dozen or so of them on the right-hand side of your screen, sort of, shouting into the wind in a way, shouting at these members at that tactical vehicle and the law enforcement officers, the SWAT team members, or whoever it is that are down there on the scene. They are adamant to keep these protests going, even as we continue to see a number of other people disperse and perhaps go home, or go in another direction. One of the things that we saw, Brittany, in the protests that you were covering a couple of weeks back was the ability that the police had not just to disperse the crowds initially with a tear gas or something, but to also then do a sweep of the streets, almost like a grid going up and down literally every single street to make sure that any protesters who may have tried to sort of hide out and wait for things to die down so that they could come back out. The police wanted to make sure that that was not the case, that those people were not able to come out and cause any more damage. But here we just simply don't have those numbers. We don't have, I mean, there's certainly a lot of law enforcement out there, but not what we saw a couple of weeks ago. Like we said, the National Guard is not there as well. And they provided a big boost, not just tactically, but also just in terms of, sheer intimidation factor, I guess. If you were a protester out in the street looking to cause trouble, and all of a sudden you see all of those men and women in uniform coming at you, it might cause you to think twice before going ahead and doing anything. But things do seem to have calmed down a bit as we come up on about 10 minutes before 2 a.m. Sunday morning. It's been a long night. Saturday was a long day for the protesters, also a day in which we saw and learned of the resignation of longtime Atlanta Police Department Chief Erica Shields, who stepped down from her position.